So Preludes 13 is here, and while there are some things I really like, there are some things I do not like at all. So let's talk about it. I am coming to you unscripted this evening to get this video out as quickly as possible. I want to give you my first impressions on Preludes 13, having just tried it out today. If you want to see a full VOD of gameplay, that's over on my Twitch channel. I stream for about 6 hours today, and I have fired my old multi-streaming software because we could not get it to go onto YouTube. So I apologize for that if you were looking forward to that stream on YouTube. Let's take a look at Prisms. I want to give you my first impressions with the caveat that I've only been able to play for about 6 hours so far today, so I do think that my opinion will develop over time. That said, for starters, I kind of like Prisms. I think they're pretty fun. They are interesting. The way that you can swap between loadouts and have everything saved with your prism is so good. This is so convenient, and it really makes switching between things a lot simpler. I really do like the prism system. There are things I'm not a fan of, but the prisms themselves, I think, are not the pain point for me. I think the prisms themselves are actually pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to finding out what else DE can do with them. You'll probably notice, though, that in all of these builds that I'm flipping through, there is some commonality between them. So we are going to talk about some of the things that I don't like with this system, but they're not the prisms. So that's great. Prisms are neat. That's fun. How do you get them? Well, these 3 starting prisms are all very easy to get. Iridis's Shaman and Rogued Sapphine and Warrior of Mora, very easy to get. Go to your faction enclave. I'll show you on the map right now where those are. You go to your faction enclave, you talk to your faction representative, and then after that conversation, you will have that prism. So Kith of Kings enclave is in here. It's inside this little thing right here, that little tomb, little cave. And then your Silent Rose enclave is right over here. It's the Drip and Flagon. It's underground in a cave here if you haven't been there yet. And then your Alka's Children enclave is underground in here. You can enter through this cave here, Hilly Den, or there's like a little sinkhole here where you can enter and you can get into the Alka's Children enclave. And so those 3 starting prisms are all very easy to get. You just have to talk to the representative. You don't have to do anything else. That's pretty great. I'm really, really happy with the way that these 3 have been implemented. The other ones, I really hope that DE revisits. So your hybrid prisms and your extreme prisms, you have to purchase from the faction shop. Your extreme prisms are the ones that invest a very large amount into one of your 3 virtues, and your hybrid prisms are between 2 virtues, like your midpoint between 2. Your extreme prisms you can purchase at rank 2 of each faction. So rank 2 of the Silent Rose for the Grace, rank 2 of Kith of Kings for the Courage, and rank 2 of Alka's Children for Spirit. The hybrid prisms are at rank 4. The prisms don't cost so much standing that the grind is impossible. I'm very happy that DE made them extremely affordable. That's wonderful. But that faction rep grind for the rep is insane. Like, that's so high for something like this, especially given how we're going to see these hybrid prisms are extremely important for this meta. So I really don't love that these are hidden behind ranks. That rank grind is so high. You're still going to have to grind up your first faction high enough to buy Sacred Shimmer. Then you're going to have to craft your talisman to swap to another faction. On the plus side, though, they removed the faction swapping cooldown. So you can now swap to factions whenever you like. That's a big improvement. That's a huge win, especially since there are a lot of things that are stuck behind faction shops now. So I'm really, really happy about that change. That is a great quality of life improvement. Makes things feel so much better than they would otherwise. So you don't have to worry about swapping. For veteran players, that's a huge win here. For new players who have not yet ranked up their factions, well, it's going to be a while before all builds are available to you. I don't think that this is super great for making this game more accessible to new players, but it is what it is. This is the situation that we're in right now. The wild prisms are nice. They're strong. They're not as extreme as the extreme prisms. They're not as slight as the slight prisms, the starter prisms. They're a mid ground. There's nothing crazy OP about them, but they are very good. So I think that's a fine place for them to be. They fit a sort of like a midpoint that I think is cool. I think that that's nice. I think that if other things weren't causing the kinds of problems that they were, this would be a really cool addition. So overall, the prisms themselves, I'm feeling pretty good about. I do think that the way that you can use talismans to top off virtues and to like fine tune what virtues you're getting is really neat. I love that that's saved with your loadout, and that's pretty cool. It's great. This feels good. Attunements on armor, I feel kind of ambivalent about, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, because I don't find that this ends up being significant in my decision making. I'm just not really thinking about it that much. Once I've finished building my virtues and figuring out how I want to set up my loadout, armor's the last thing I do. And I just go through and I look at like, all right, what is the best armor that I can equip and get the full bonus from? You still get the base value of the armor, but you don't get any of the extra attunement bonus from the armor unless you have the virtue requirement. Since I have all the armor pieces in the game, it's fine. I just equip the best one that I've got for the loadout that I have. It is just not important enough. What the armor is offering is not important enough to further complicate all of this, which is quite complicated. So let's talk about that. Why is that so complicated? Because of virtue requirements. Virtue requirements are kind of spoiling my enjoyment of this patch, if I'm going to be perfectly blunt. There are so many good things here that I want to be so excited about. We're going to get into some of them. I'm going to talk about other changes that are really, really good. There's a lot in P13 that is really fun and exciting, and that is going to be great for Soulframe. Look how cool my character looks. I love the shade of green. Like all of my loadouts are I'm customizing my colors. It's so fun. There's a lot. We're going to talk about it. I'm going to show it to you. But virtue requirements are just ruining this for me. Not ruining. Ruining is too strong of a word. But virtue requirements are a big damper because I love to play bow. I just want to play bow. I want to play bow on everything. It's just what I enjoy. Like, I can play other weapons. I will play other weapons to level them up, like, sure. But I love the archery in Soulframe. I want to play bow with everything, and doing that severely limits what builds I can run. I know that the virtue requirement is supposed to be less punishing in P13 because you don't lose damage for not having the virtue requirement. But that's a terrible half truth because you definitely do lose damage. All you get is the base damage. You don't get any virtue scaling. If you do hit your virtue requirement, you gain a lot more damage. We'll go find some barrels. We'll go head out to some barrels and I'll show you in more detail what I mean here. Blitzel here, right, has a split attunement, right? It has both courage and grace attuned. So you would think that if I am not running grace, I will still at least get some damage from the courage, but that is not true. If I don't hit my grace requirement, I don't get any attunement bonus from neither grace nor courage. And that ends up being extremely punishing if I want to run any build that doesn't have grace in it with a bow. Damage output absolutely tanks. So let's go take a look at that. We're going to go find some barrels. All right, so here I am on my split virtue build using the hybrid prism that gives me both courage and grace so I can hit my virtue requirement for Blitzel. That's going to give me both courage and grace. Let's go see how much damage I do to a barrel. All right, let's see. Just a regular light attack, 138 damage. Cool. Let's switch this over to the extreme courage prism, which in theory Blitzel should benefit from because it does have a courage attunement, right? So it would make sense that I would still benefit, but I'm no longer hitting my grace requirement. All right. Now, all of a sudden, my damage drops significantly because I'm not getting any of that virtue bonus. I still have the same number of virtues, but now I'm only getting the 91 base damage. This means that if I run a bow build, I get punished significantly for not running any grace, for not meeting my weapon's virtue requirement. This makes it really hard for me to enjoy the good things about this patch. There are so many good things, I think, about this patch, the way that it's going to shake up the meta and try some different builds and combinations. I actually really enjoy how virtues are affecting scaling right now. I think it's very cool. I noticed right away when I put on Oshelda that the bestone targets were getting affected by virtue scaling. I love that uh, my Sizemore is actually rolling farther when I have more courage on my build. It feels so good for those allocations to be meaningful on my Pact Arcanics. I really like that aspect of this patch. However, the ways that virtues do other things for your character make those choices feel very stifling and limiting, I think. The fact that I have to run Grace whether I want to use my Grace ability or not just feels bad for someone who likes to do bow. I feel like I can either choose to play bow, and then I can either run Grace build, Spirit Grace build, or Grace Courage build, or I can use a bow, do a Courage Spirit or Courage Spirit bow build, and just be bad. It doesn't feel good. It feels like a choice has been taken away from me, and maybe if I had never had that choice before, it wouldn't feel so bad, but it really does now. It feels like a whole chunk of the spectrum has been taken away because I need to meet this virtue requirement. Now, really important question. How limiting is that really in gameplay? So if I'm going to go on my let's do full spirit. Let's pretend that I like Astrosphere and we're going to do full spirit, and so I'm not really getting damage or armor from anything. How punishing is that really? Well, the answer for armor is quite punishing. The answer for armor is that in Koga especially, you can get one tapped. I did on stream. It can get you need the armor is what I'm saying. Although, man, without courage to give you more health, you just don't want to get hit. You just want to dodge. Just realistically, P13 is like you're either running a courage build or you're good at your dodges. But you know, how much is this damage difference going to really matter? Well, when you're not in Koga, it doesn't matter that much. It's not huge, but it is meaningful. You know, my headshots are still good. Like, that's nice. You can just build for your rune procs and then it doesn't matter as much. But at that point, if we're saying like, oh, the virtue scaling system that we have is not so bad because you can just build for your rune procs and then it doesn't matter, you're basically saying, oh, don't worry, the virtue scaling isn't bad because you don't have to engage with it, which I don't feel like is a great solution. So my thought here is that I really think that these virtue requirements are stifling build diversity pretty extremely. Like that damage difference, what 91 versus 138? That's what 9 plus 38, 47 damage difference. Like, that's a huge chunk of damage. That's a huge portion of damage. That is very, very significant. So like, sure, I'm not technically punished in that my Blitzel doesn't do half damage if I don't hit the virtue requirement. So it's still like usable technically, but there's no way that I'm taking a build into Koga without hitting the virtue requirement. So that means at higher level gameplay, you just have to hit these virtue requirements in order to do meaningful damage, which means that it's pushing your builds to match your weapon rather than saying, oh, I'm going to focus on the Pact. So my big question for the DE devs here would be, Where do you want the focus of Soulframe gameplay to be? Do you want it to be on the weapons or do you want it to be on the pacts? Because the way that this is set up right now with virtue requirements make this virtue requirement the most important thing to think about in your building. And then your pact just kind of does what it does based on the virtues you can get. Like you start with your weapon, you're like, all right, well, I guess I kind of want Courage and Grace on Oud Tempest because I do like Sizemore. I think it's fun and I'm stuck in Grace no matter what. And well, that's okay because I do like Admos. So great. We go, Courage and Grace split. What if I wanted to do a 3-way split? Well, that's too bad. I don't have enough virtue points to hit my attunement, my virtue requirement for Blitzel if I want to do a 3-way split. Why is that happening? Well, the reason for that has to do with a change to Pact upgrades. It used to be that every point spent on these virtue upgrades for your Pact would translate into a point for that virtue. So right now I have 19 courage. I'm going to put in 1 point into Mora's Pride, and it will give me 20 courage. Great. Very straightforward. So it used to be that as you were buying these more expensive upgrades, this would go from 20 to 22. That has changed. This is now still amounting to only 1 point in the virtue per upgrade, which means that if I spend 10 Pact upgrade points to max out Mora's Pride, I only get 4 points of courage for those 10 Pact upgrade points. I really hope this is a bug. I really, really hope this is a bug because that would at least take some of the pressure off with those virtue requirements. But right now, with this being the way that it is very difficult to hit your virtue requirements if you're not just doing a 50-50 split with one of them being the requirement for your weapon. So this is something I hope is a bug and is going to change, but realistically, I just really want to know, like I would love to hear from the devs about this. What is the point of the virtue requirements? Why do we care so much that bow users use grace? What is the point of that? Is it because of fantasy game tropes that Legolas is graceful? Because let me tell you, as a real life archer, there are many different types of archery in the world. There are so many different styles of archery, and they're all really different. I would think of like Kyudo as a very like spirit focus oriented archery, and then you have like trick archery where you have the lighter weight bows doing trick shots and as a very grace oriented, and then you have the like long bows as very courage oriented. Why do we have to narrow ourselves into these tropes where bow equals grace? That just feels like, what about your full spirit ritual daggers? I don't understand why we've made this change. It feels very limiting. It feels, compared to the versatility of P12 Soulframe, this feels kind of boring and cliche. I'm sorry. I love this game. I promise you I love this game, and I'm saying this out of love. But I just don't like it. I liked the versatility we had before, where we could mix and match whatever, and if I wanted to run a full spirit bow build, I could do that, and it was fun, and it was great, and it was cool. And I cannot anymore. That's just not viable anymore, and it's sad. It's sad to lose that creativity. It's sad to lose that kind of, those special, unique builds. I cannot tell you how many games I've played where I've been like, wow, it would be so cool to be a spirit archer and shoot healing shots, and I thought this would be the game, and I feel like we have taken a very big step away from that. So I really hope that we reconsider here. I'm also going to point out that if we were trying to make a simpler system for new players, this ain't it. Because now I'm going to have to go through my Pact upgrades to figure out, okay, what do I need to get what I want? I know I need sympathy. These are going to be stuck between all of my builds. So while my Prism will change between my builds, my Pact upgrades will be the same regardless. So I'm just gonna, like, at least my talisman will change with my loadout slot, but this won't. So I think this is gonna be tough. I think this is tough. I think this is really tough. And I hope that we see some changes here. I sincerely hope that we see some changes here. I think that if we have had exactly the system that we currently have, maybe even with the virtue requirements, but we could still fully change the attunements of weapons with blessed joinery, I would feel very differently about this. I don't know how I feel yet about these changes to what virtues do. I can't mouse over here to show you what I'm talking about, but if you look in the top left there, right? Virtues, courage grants life, spirit quickens magic, basically cooldown reduction for all of your arcanics. The spirit CDR is strong, not crazy OP, but very strong. The life from courage is strong, not crazy OP, but very strong. Grace, the way that it's worded is quite confusing. It's not as straightforward as I would like. But essentially, when I'm going into an encounter, only the first shot is benefiting from grace scaling, because after that they're alerted. Only this first one gets my headshot multiplier. That's pretty solid damage, hooray! That one doesn't get it because he's alerted already. Yeah, like 1 shot per encounter gets the grayscaling. And look, maybe bows don't need a bunch of extra damage, and that's fine. That's okay. I am all right with not getting a bunch of extra deeps. I actually don't think that more damage should be part of what any of the virtues do. I think that health and cooldown reduction are just so valuable. I want grace to have something that's equally valuable. That's really my pain point with what grace does compared to courage and spirit, is that it just doesn't feel as valuable to get this finisher damage. Even for short blades, I feel like that's just not as good. It's not as strong. Something like maybe, extra movement, extra attack speed, a longer dodge. Maybe if it's not run speed, because we don't want to make people zipping all over the place, maybe we get slightly larger dodges or something. Just something that is utilitarian and just as useful as more life and cooldown reduction on arcanics. Because at the moment, the grace benefits just feel very niche and comparatively lackluster. But this doesn't frustrate me in the way that virtue requirements frustrate me. If I did not have the virtue requirement, I would be choosing what to run, probably based on what arcanic I like. Like, yes, the extra cooldown reduction is good, but so is extra life. And if Grace had something that was also good, I would probably just be deciding this based on like what arcanic I want to run. I would love to run a build that runs Siren that focuses on Trick of the Light and Pictrix Powder. I love these 2 abilities. I think they're a lot of fun. I do enjoy stealth, but it's not as fun for me as running around and getting skirmishy with these 2. So I would love to run that, but a Courage Spirit split just doesn't work because of the virtue requirements. I just don't have the option to do that. I would still run Grace on some things. Grace on Orangal would be great, but it's just so hard to hit this virtue requirement. So anyway, I suppose the bottom line for me is that I just don't feel like I have agency in my build craft in the same way that I did with P12. My weapons are essentially determining my build. They're determining what Pact Arcanics I'm focusing on. They're determining basically everything. And it feels very limiting. It feels very stifling. So I actually really like the prisms, and I very much enjoy the way that virtues are impacting Pact Arcanics. I love the scaling. I think that that's really cool. I think it's fun to play around with, but it does feel like the Pact Arcanic virtue scaling is fighting with the weapon attunement virtue scaling, and these 2 systems are just not playing well together. And I feel like I have to choose between one and the other. And because like usual, our Pact Arcanic base values are good enough that if I'm going to have to sacrifice either Pact Arcanic scaling or weapon damage, I'm going to sacrifice the Pact Arcanic scaling and I'm going to get my weapon damage. Because realistically, weapon damage is just too important. So yeah, I'm really enjoying how virtues affect Pact Arcanics. I think that that's really cool. I just wish that I were more free to engage with that system without having to sacrifice my weapon damage. That choice just feels so rough and so contrary to the stated goal. And then Buildcraft has gotten so much more complex with min-maxing your stats through items and not being able to directly control with the need to hit these virtue requirements. I think if we didn't have to hit these requirements, equipping different things to get different bonuses would feel a lot less complicated than it feels right now. But hitting this weapon requirement is just too important and too punishing if you don't do it. So my least favorite part of this patch for sure. But here's hoping that this gets changed in the future. So let's talk about some of the other things we've seen in Preludes 13. I'm really loving the new character customization options. The hairstyles are very cool, lots of really good options that I am enjoying playing around with. This one is definitely winning as my favorite so far. Love the way that we can customize eye color. Very, very cool. Having a lot of fun with that one. Skin tone is here. You can change your character's frame. If you do this, though, it does reset your face. But you can change your frame. Then you just pick a different face here. Yeah, I think this is really, really cool. I love the way that my character looks now. I am just really happy with these changes. This is great. We can also change our Pact Arm cosmetics, or the colors at the moment. Hopefully in the future, we will see some other customization options as well with different skins, maybe, I hope, eventually. But I'm really enjoying the ability to dye these in different colors. This is so cool. Orengal's claw is finally hidden, which just makes my archering in Orengal feel so much better. I know that's maybe a silly thing for me to be excited about, but I love it. World trees now have this votive system where you can select your tail at the tree. I love this. I think this is such a improvement to the way things that were before. It also shows you where avocado is. So if you're looking for an avocado, the world tree will tell you if there's one nearby. It will also tell you if there's an organ up nearby. I have heard people saying that this is increasing travel time, and for that I say, just use Orengal. Use Orengal to help you get to the trees. It really does help cut down on travel time quite a bit. This won't be an issue at all when they put mounts into the game, and that's happening sometime this year. So think of this as a temporary inconvenience. In the long run, though, it is so nice not to have to just sit around and idle and hope for the right tail to show up. It's also really nice to be able to go to a tree and just know right away if it's the kind of tail that you would like to do. So I'm very much enjoying this new system. I think it's a great quality of life improvement, and I'm super happy to see it in Soulframe. There are fewer heavy attacks from enemies in melee combat, so you are not finding that you have to block your or evade your heavies quite as often as you used to. And that is a great improvement as well. Melee combat definitely does feel a lot better this patch. I do want to try it out more and get a feel for it on more weapons before I develop a more informed opinion about how big those changes are, but my first impression of melee combat is that it feels a lot better in P13. The organ is a very, very fun fight. I'm enjoying this one tremendously. Please, DE, put this music on Spotify. It is so good, it made me max out my volume for music because it's such a good song. The Vadagar Bear looks cool based on what we saw in the dev stream, but I haven't seen one in game yet, so I don't have an opinion on it. Supposedly it spawns at night. I would assume it's some of the same places where the Vadagar stag used to spawn, but again, haven't found one, so don't know what to say about that. The new audio cues for when a Pact Arcanic is off cooldown are a really great improvement. We've also gotten some Pact changes that are worth noting. Howl's Smite buff got a pretty hefty nerf. I'm not sure yet if I feel like it's still good or if it's just too much of a nerf. I'm gonna need to test it more to have a really strong opinion on it. I do definitely notice the difference, although I'm not running a full Grace build at the moment, so I'm not sure if I can judge it fairly right now. Bromius is bugged currently because Rum Thump is not doing any damage, but this is definitely just a bug, so don't worry. Let DE cook a bit, they are going to fix it. Once Bromius gets some fixes, I'll take another look at the Pact, and we will definitely see some updated build guides for all packs in P13. So, yeah, those are my first impressions. Is this how I'm gonna feel a week from now? I don't know. Maybe with more time, I'm gonna have a different point of view on these things, but so far, right now, I do enjoy Prisms. I do really like the way that Arcanics are scaling with virtues, but I don't like how the virtue requirement on weapons is forcing me to run certain virtues and thus limiting how I can engage with my Pact Arcanics. I don't feel like those two systems go well together, and I think the game would be a lot more fun if we didn't have those virtue requirements at all. But this is what we've got, so for now I'm just gonna do the best that I can and give my honest feedback on it, which is unfortunately that bow players are being forced into Grace builds and it doesn't feel great. The rest of the systems are fun. Swapping your loadouts with Prisms is great. There's just so much potential, and I feel like I'm missing out on part of it because there's a certain weapon that I really like. So my question for all of you today is, what weapon do you like to use the most, and do you feel like that weapon choice is limiting your build options? Because that's definitely how I feel, but again, I'm only one envoy, and this game is for all of us, so let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for bearing with me on this very rambly video. Next week, I will have a more detailed and organized take for you, but I wanted to get this first impression out right away and also get this information out to you right away on how you get your prisms and how some of this new stuff works. So I hope that that was helpful, and I hope you enjoy playing with this patch over the weekend. And until next time, happy hunting!